Hey there! Imagine yourself wrapped in the gentle hush of a London dawn. The city's breath slow and grey, beneath a sky that promises secrets. Tonight, you're stepping into the shadows of Berners Street, where the ordinary is about to spiral into the extraordinary, a single prank so elaborate it will bring the city to its knees and leave reputations in tatters. Before the night is over, you'll discover how a letter can topple the mighty, and why the truth behind this hoax is stranger than any fiction. If you enjoy these immersive historical mysteries, like or subscribe, only if it feels right. And, in the comments, share where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and get comfortable as we journey back to a London morning where nothing is as it seems. You stand on Berners Street in 1810, boots pressed against slick cobblestones as a chill seeps through your coat. The city is alive with the clatter of hooves, the sharp scent of coal smoke, and the distant clang of church bells. 54 Berners Street is just ahead, its brick facade unremarkable, until you notice the crowd swelling, faces turned with anticipation, all eyes fixed on the door. The Lord Mayor's carriage rolls up, the gold trim catching what little light the morning offers. The mayor steps out in full regalia, his robes trailing, and the street seems to hold its breath. You can hear the shuffle of boots as the Lord Mayor surveys the scene, his expression a careful mask. The air is thick with the perfume of anticipation and the tang of ink and damp wool. Merchants, labourers, and even a few curious children press closer, hoping for a glimpse of something extraordinary. The only sound is the low murmur of nearby voices drifting from an open window. You sense that this is no ordinary morning, and the stakes are higher than anyone suspects. It's not just idle curiosity that's drawn you and the others here. Whispers ripple through the crowd about a mysterious letter, one that promised a scandal big enough to shake the city's foundations. The Lord Mayor isn't the only one lured to 54 Berners Street. Powerful men and women have arrived, each summoned by a note hinting at fraud, fortune, or disaster. You catch the glint of a police badge and the anxious face of a bank governor, both drawn in by the same invisible thread. The city's reputation, and perhaps your own, hangs in the balance. You edge closer, feeling the press of bodies and the heat of expectation. The Lord Mayor knocks, and for a moment nothing happens. Then the door creaks open, revealing a bewildered housekeeper, her apron askew, eyes wide with confusion. She stammers, insisting she knows nothing of any scandal, and the mayor's brow furrows. The crowd leans in, eager for the next revelation. Suddenly, a delivery man barrels through, arms full of parcels, demanding payment for goods no one ordered. Behind him, a flustered baker shouts about unpaid cakes, and a chimney sweep waves a bill in the air. The confusion grows as more tradesmen arrive, each insisting they were summoned to 54 Berners Street by urgent letters. By mid-afternoon, the street is a tangled mess of carriages, carts, and angry voices, traffic snarled for blocks in every direction. You catch snippets of argument as tempers flare. Merchants demand compensation, while the Lord Mayor tries to restore order, his authority tested by the sheer absurdity of the scene. A woman in a flowered shawl mutters about city officials wasting everyone's time. The scent of fresh bread mixes with the acrid smoke from a stalled cab, and you realize the city itself is beginning to fray. The chaos is spreading beyond Berners Street, rippling through the neighborhood. You step back to avoid a toppled crate, nearly colliding with a newsboy waving a freshly printed paper. The headline blares about the Berners Street hoax, and you see the story spreading like wildfire. Some in the crowd grumble that the press is exaggerating, eager for a spectacle. Others whisper that this was a deliberate attack on the city's pride. The line between truth and rumor blurs in the smoke-filled air. As the hours drag on, the stakes become painfully clear. The city's working class, those who answered the mysterious summons, are left unpaid and frustrated. You hear a coachman curse as he counts his lost fares, and a seamstress wipes away tears, her day's wages vanished in the confusion. The Lord Mayor, his patience worn thin, calls for the perpetrator to be found and forced to make restitution. The mood shifts from amusement to anger, and you feel the tension crackle. The crowd is now a living thing, pulsing with outrage and disbelief. The police try to clear the street, but every new arrival adds to the gridlock. You see a constable scribbling names into a ledger, but its clear order is slipping away. In the distance, the church bells toll again, marking time as the city's patience wears thin. The sense of control is gone, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty. You linger at the edge of the chaos, watching as the Lord Mayor confers with the Governor of the Bank of England. Both men look shaken, their authority undermined by a prankster's pen. The Governor mutters about a letter warning of massive fraud, and you realize just how far the hoax has reached. Even the city's most powerful are not immune to embarrassment. A light rain begins to fall, dampening tempers, but not the crowd. The cobblestones glisten, and you catch the scent of wet paper and spilled ink. Someone in the crowd jokes that London itself has been pranked, but the laughter is brittle. The Lord Mayor's carriage is stuck, unable to move through the sea of bodies and horses. The city's machinery has ground to a halt, all for a single address. You hear the scratch of a reporter's pencil as he sketches the scene for tomorrow's papers. The sudden commotion startles a horse, which rears and nearly topples a cart of cabbages. Children dart between legs, collecting dropped coins and scraps of gossip. The story is already becoming legend, retold with every retelling. The house at 54 Berners Street stands at the center of it all, its windows shuttered against the storm of attention. The bewildered residents plead their innocence, insisting they never sent a single letter. The Lord Mayor, his robes now wet and muddied, sighs in frustration. The truth remains elusive, hidden behind a wall of confusion and spectacle. You find yourself wondering who could have orchestrated such a scheme. The letters were precise, each tailored to its recipient, each promising something irresistible. The handwriting was careful, the ink barely smudged. Someone went to great lengths to ensure chaos. The mastermind remains in the shadows, their motives a mystery. A hush falls as a constable announces that the investigation will begin at once. Names are taken, stories collected, but no one seems any closer to the truth. The Lord Mayor promises justice, but his words ring hollow against the clamor of the crowd. The sense of injustice lingers, a bitter aftertaste in the cool air. You notice a group of merchants huddled together, counting their losses. Some demand that the city compensate them. But the officials shake their heads. The working-class victims will receive no restitution, their grievances swallowed by the city's indifference. The cost of the hoax is borne by those who can least afford it. The press, sensing the story, begins to embellish the details. Some papers claim the hoax was even grander than it was, inventing new victims and higher stakes. Others suggest a political motive, hinting at enemies within the city's own government. The narrative twists with each retelling, facts and fiction entwined. As dusk falls, the crowd begins to thin, but the sense of unease remains. You hear a merchant mutter that the city will never be the same, that trust has been broken. The Lord Mayor's carriage finally inches forward, the gold trim dulled by rain and mud. The city exhales, but the tension lingers in the air. London, 1810. The sky is the colour of soot, and you're pressed shoulder to shoulder with a crowd that smells of damp wool and rising panic. On Berners Street, the usual city rhythm is shattered. Police blockades on both ends have turned the road into a human bottle, and you're stuck in the middle, hemmed in by shouting merchants and coachmen whose horses stamp and snort, their breath ghosting in the cold air. The clang of a distant bell cuts through the chaos, echoing off brick facades. You can taste smoke and see the glint of polished boots as constables bark orders, trying to keep the crowd from spilling into violence. The air is thick with the scent of spilled vinegar and crushed oranges, casualties of a toppled cart. A fishmonger, his apron streaked with grime, shoves a rival aside, sending a cascade of slippery cod onto the cobblestones. The crowd surges, tempers snapping like dry twigs. Two men wrestle over a crate, their shouts drowned by the scrape of carriage wheels and the shrill whistle of a constable. A sharp elbow catches your ribs, and you lurch forward, swept deeper into the melee. You're wedged between a baker clutching a sack of flour and a doctor in a frock coat who mutters curses under his breath. The doctor's hat is askew, and his face is flushed with frustration. Somewhere ahead, a furious apothecary waves a ledger in the air, demanding to know who summoned him. The city's usual hum is gone, replaced by a chorus of accusations and the low thrum of suspicion. This is not just another busy morning. It's a carnival of confusion, and you're front and center. A sudden hush ripples through the crowd as a gleaming carriage rounds the corner, drawn by two black horses, whose hooves strike sparks from the stones. The Lord Mayor of London himself steps out, resplendent in full regalia, gold chain, velvet robes, and a hat that looks heavy enough to anchor a ship. His arrival stirs a fresh wave of excitement and anxiety. You feel the stakes rise, as if the city's reputation itself is on trial. The Lord Mayor's footmen clear a path, but even their authority barely penetrates the mass of bodies. The Lord Mayor's carriage halts directly in front of number 54 Berners Street. You catch a glimpse of the polished brass numbers gleaming in the weak sunlight. The mayor lifts his chin, surveying the chaos with a practiced eye. His voice booms above the din, demanding order. For a moment, you wonder if he knows more than he lets on. The crowd leans in, hungry for answers. From your vantage point, you spot a banker gripping a letter, sweat beading on his brow. The banker's knuckles are white as he clutches the envelope, glancing nervously at the police. The letter, you overhear, promised a lucrative appointment at this very address. Around him, others wave similar notes, some scrawled in elegant script, others hastily written. It dawns on you that nearly everyone here was summoned by invitation. The realization spreads like spilled ink. A woman in a feathered hat elbows past, her perfume sharp and sweet against the city's more pungent odors. She brandishes a calling card, insisting she was promised an audience with a mysterious benefactor. The police, overwhelmed, try to separate fact from fiction. Each new arrival brings a fresh layer of confusion, their stories overlapping and contradicting. The air is electric with suspicion, and you sense that trust is in short supply. Amid the chaos, rumors swirl. Some claim a wealthy widow inside number 54 is giving away fortunes. Others whisper of a secret society meeting gone awry. You hear a constable mutter that the whole affair reeks of a prank. The press, notebooks in hand, dart through the crowd like sharks. One reporter sketches the scene, his pencil flying across the page. He catches your eye and grins, as if he's seen this kind of madness before. The tension is palpable. Each minute, the stakes climb higher. Reputation, freedom, even survival feel suddenly fragile. You notice a merchant eyeing his rival with open hostility. A coachman, red-faced and sweating, curses the day he ever answered the letter. Someone shouts that the police should arrest everyone and be done with it. The city's patience is fraying, and you realize you're caught in the middle of a story that could turn ugly at any moment. Just as the crowd reaches a fever pitch, a familiar face appears on the stoop of number 54. Theodore Hook, infamous for his razor wit and love of mischief, stands with arms crossed and a crooked smile. Hook was known for improvising satirical songs at society parties, always with a glint of trouble in his eye. Today, he seems to be conducting the chaos like an orchestra. The crowd's anger pivots, focusing on this unlikely maestro. Hook's presence changes the mood. Some in the crowd recognize him and jeer. Others demand an explanation. The Lord Mayor glares, clearly unimpressed. Hook bows theatrically, then vanishes inside the house, leaving the mob to stew. You feel the city's pulse quicken, as if everyone senses they've become unwitting actors in someone else's farce. The mystery deepens, and you're left wondering who is truly in control. A sudden downpour sends umbrellas snapping open, the rain hissing as it hits the hot stones. The crowd scatters for cover, but the sense of confusion lingers. Police huddle under the eaves, their uniforms soaked and spirits flagging. The Lord Mayor's carriage glistens with water, the gold trim running with rivulets. You wipe rain from your face, the city's grime mixing with the water on your skin. Even nature seems to mock the day's disorder. As the rain eases, a rumor surfaces that the entire spectacle was the result of a wager. You overhear a merchant mutter that Hook had bet he could make any address in London the talk of the town. The idea is both absurd and oddly believable. You remember stories of Hook's pranks, his talent for turning everyday life into a stage for his humor. The notion that hundreds could be summoned by a single letter feels both thrilling and unsettling. The press seizes on the theory, their headlines growing more outlandish by the hour. Some newspapers claim the crowd numbered in the thousands. Others insist it was all a clever exaggeration. You watch as a reporter corners a police sergeant, demanding to know if the Lord Mayor was truly caught off guard. The sergeant shrugs, unwilling to commit to any version of events. The truth, it seems, is as slippery as the fish scattered on the stones. A breather settles over the street as the afternoon wanes. Merchants gather their wares, muttering about lost profits and wasted time. The police finally lower the barricades, allowing the crowd to trickle away. The Lord Mayor departs in his carriage, face set in a mask of dignified annoyance. You linger, watching the last of the onlookers drift into the grey London dusk. The scent of smoke and wet cobblestones hangs in the air. For days afterward, Berners Street is the talk of every pub and parlour. Some swear they saw a fortune handed out. Others claim it was all smoke and mirrors. The city's trust in itself feels shaken, as if the prank has exposed a deeper vein of insecurity. You overhear a pair of clerks debating whether the Lord Mayor's appearance was planned or another stroke of Hook's mischief. The mystery refuses to settle, lingering in the city's collective memory. Historians later argue over the details. Some say the press inflated the numbers, turning a clever prank into a legendary fiasco. Others insist the chaos was real, that London's order truly broke down for a single afternoon. You find yourself replaying the day in your mind, searching for clues that might explain how a single letter could upend the city. The answer remains elusive, hidden beneath layers of rumor and pride. You realize that Berners Street's lesson is not just about mischief, but about the fragility of public trust. In a city where reputation is everything, a well-placed joke can shake the pillars of order. The echo of that day lingers in the clatter of carriage wheels and the wary glances of merchants. You carry the memory with you, a reminder that even the most ordinary street can become the stage for history's most baffling mysteries. The crowd's tension is almost physical, as if the city itself is holding its breath. It's a damp morning in London, 1810, and you're pressed against the soot-stained brick of Berners Street, shoulder to shoulder with strangers who look equally baffled. The crowd is a churning mass. Top hats, bonnets, and the glint of polished boots all jostling for space. Somewhere behind you, the muffled drone of a street singer drifts from a window, mixing with the sharper scent of pipe smoke and the tang of wet leather. You can feel the tension humming through the air, as if the city itself is holding its breath. You're not just an onlooker, you're caught in a spectacle with London's reputation on the line. Close by, a banker clutches a letter, creased and trembling in his gloved hand. His eyes dart from face to face, searching for someone who might explain why he's been summoned here with such urgency. The governor of the Bank of England is unmistakable, his presence marked by the hush that follows him, the gold watch chain glinting at his waist. The letter in his pocket claims a fraud of unimaginable scale, one that could topple fortunes and ruin lives if left unchecked. The air is thick with the scent of ink and worry. A bootmaker, arms full of shining leather, tries to muscle through the crowd, shouting for space, as if his business depends on it. His summons was no less specific, a letter promising a private commission from a wealthy client whose name he's never heard before. Each person here has been lured by a different pretext, their instructions tailored with uncanny precision. The effect is a crowd as diverse as London itself, all converging on this single street. You sense the stakes are higher than any ordinary prank. The real target, you realize, isn't gold or jewels. its dignity. London's finest have been herded like cattle, their reputations dangling by a thread as neighbors crane from windows and gossip swirls in the chilly air. You can almost taste the embarrassment, sharp as vinegar, as the governor exchanges a wary glance with the banker. For a moment you wonder who could have orchestrated such a precise, sprawling deception. The question lingers, unanswered, as another carriage rattles to a stop, its driver waving a letter of his own. The police arrive next, boots thumping on the cobbles, their uniforms crisp against the grey morning. They push through the crowd, blocking off both ends of Berners Street with a practiced efficiency that speaks to the gravity of the situation. The sound of their whistles slices through the chatter, and the crowd's energy shifts from curiosity to frustration. You feel the press of bodies tighten, the sense of being trapped in a story that's spiraling out of control. By mid-afternoon, the street is gridlocked, a tangle of carriages, carts, and irate tradesmen whose tempers flare with each passing minute. The air is thick with the clatter of hooves, the sharp scent of horse sweat, and the distant clamour of city bells. Shopkeepers peer from their doors, their faces a study in disbelief and irritation. The spectacle has spilled beyond Berners Street, drawing in the surrounding neighbourhood, until it feels as if half of London is stuck in this bottleneck. The city's pride is bruised, and you're standing in the bruise. You catch snatches of conversation, accusations, demands, and the persistent question of who will pay for the chaos. Some call for the mysterious perpetrator to make financial restitution, their voices rising above the din. Others argue in hushed tones about whether the police are in on the joke. The tension is palpable, a living thing that coils around the crowd and refuses to let go. The threat is real. Reputations, livelihoods, and public trust all hang in the balance. A sudden commotion draws your attention to the far end of the street, where a delivery boy has tripped and sent a basket of pastries tumbling into the gutter. The smell of crushed bread and spilled jam mingles with the more acrid notes of sweat and coal smoke. The crowd surges, laughter and curses mingling as people jostle for a better view. You find yourself swept along, caught in the current of London's collective embarrassment. The letters themselves are a marvel, each one handwritten, the ink barely dry, the instructions so personal that no two are alike. You glimpse a corner of one, the words looping elegantly across the page, promising a secret meeting or a lucrative deal. The precision of the hoax is almost surgical, cutting straight to the pride of its victims. You wonder if anyone will ever admit how easily they were fooled. As the afternoon drags on, the frustration turns to anger. Tradesmen demand compensation for lost business, their voices echoing off the narrow facades. The governor's patience wears thin, his face flushed as he confers with the police. The authorities are at a loss. There is no culprit in sight, only a mounting sense of humiliation. You realize that the city's faith in its own cleverness has been shaken. Somewhere nearby, a woman in a blue dress clutches a bouquet, her summons promising a wealthy suitor. She looks around, bewildered, as the realization dawns that she is just another pawn in a much larger game. The scent of her perfume drifts above the crowd, a fleeting note of sweetness in an otherwise sour day. You notice her eyes narrow as she overhears a joke at her expense. The wounds from this day will not heal quickly. The police, desperate to regain control, began taking names and collecting the letters as evidence. Their notebooks fill with addresses, times, and the peculiar details that brought each person here. The crowd resists, some refusing to hand over their precious invitations, convinced they are still part of something exclusive. The spectacle has become a lesson in human folly, and you are learning it alongside everyone else. By now, word has spread to the city's papers, reporters scribbling furiously as they interview the disgruntled and the humiliated. The story will soon be everywhere, a cautionary tale for anyone who thinks themselves immune to deception. The threat of public ridicule looms large, and you feel the weight of it pressing in from all sides. In the distance, you hear the faint chime of a church bell, marking the hour as the day slips away. A soft drizzle begins to fall, dampening hats and tempers alike. The scent of wet stone rises from the pavement, mingling with the metallic tang of anticipation. You pull your coat tighter, resisting the urge to leave before the mystery is solved. The hoax has become a kind of theatre, and you're both audience and actor in its unfolding drama. Behind the scenes, the true mastermind, later revealed as Theodore Hook, remains a ghost. His identity as the perpetrator will stay hidden for years, the secret whispered only in the most daring circles. The knowledge that one person could manipulate so many with nothing but pen and paper is both thrilling and unsettling. You wonder if you've ever been so cleverly played. The city's patience is wearing thin, and the police debate how to restore order without further inflaming tempers. Some propose a public apology. Others suggest fines for those who refuse to disperse. The threat to public trust is clear. If London's elite can be duped, what hope is there for the rest? You sense that the consequences of this day will ripple outward long after the crowd has gone. As dusk approaches, the lamps along Berners Street flicker to life, casting long shadows across the cobbles. The crowd has thinned, but the memory of the day lingers in every whispered conversation and sidelong glance. You feel the chill settle in, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to endure. The city will not soon forget the day its pride was so expertly punctured. In the aftermath, there are calls for restitution, for someone to pay for the wasted hours and bruised egos. The authorities promise an investigation, but you know the trail is already cold. The hoax has left its mark, not just on Berners Street, but on the very fabric of London's self-image. You walk away, the echo of your footsteps lost in the evening hush. You realize that what happened here is more than a prank. It's a challenge to the city's sense of order. The lesson is clear. Trust is fragile, and the clever can turn it into a weapon. You carry that knowledge with you as you slip into the shadows, the scent of smoke and rain clinging to your coat. The city's secrets are safe for now. Just as you think the drama is over, you hear glass shatter and someone cry out as a cart of linens tips, spilling into the gutter. The chaos is not quite finished, and neither is your part in it. You turn, drawn back into the swirl of unsolved history, knowing that the next moment could bring a new revelation. The story is far from over. London, 1810. You're part of the crowd pressed shoulder to shoulder on Berners Street, the air thick with the scent of coal smoke and something sharper, perfume, sweat, and the faint copper tang of spilled coins. The city's usual order has vanished in a blink. You hear glass shatter, and someone cry out as a cart of linens tips, spilling into the gutter. Pickpockets slip through the crush, hands fast as shadows. The scent of perfume mingles with that of crushed fruit and trampled bread. A jeweler yells in outrage as his wares vanish in the chaos. The street has become a stage for disaster, every moment more frenzied than the last. A baker's boy, cheeks streaked with flour, tries to dart between two arguing merchants, only to be knocked sideways by a falling crate of eggs. The eggs burst, their yolks painting the cobblestones and catching the light like golden stains. You catch a whiff of vinegar and rot as the perishable items are trampled underfoot, ruined beyond saving. The grocer's face reddens as he realizes his apples have rolled straight into the gutter, lost to the city's hunger. The everyday rhythm of commerce has been upended, and you can feel the tension rising like a kettle about to boil. A sudden scuffle breaks out near the curb, where a butcher and a fishmonger are locked in a shouting match over a toppled basket of oysters. Their voices rise above the city's din, drifting from open windows. Fights flare up between merchants, each blaming the next for the mounting losses. You edge back, boots slipping on a patch of smashed pears and broken glass. The smell of smoke drifts from a nearby chimney, mixing with the tang of brine and the iron scent of blood from a cut thumb. You're not the only one on edge. Thieves and pickpockets have slipped in among the chaos, their hands moving with a practiced grace. A woman clutches her handbag tighter as a gloved figure brushes past, and a newsboy's pockets are suddenly lighter than they were a minute ago. The city's underbelly has surfaced, feeding on confusion. The sense of vulnerability is almost physical, like a chill running down your spine. In the midst of the disaster, someone shouts that a reward is being offered for information about whoever's behind this madness. The word spreads quickly, whispered from ear to ear, and you see faces change as hope flickers in their eyes. The promise of money is a thin comfort, but it's something to hold on to as reputations and livelihoods hang in the balance. You hear a merchant mutter that he'll never see a penny, but still the possibility lingers. The street is clogged with wagons, costermongers, and a growing number of constables who look as bewildered as everyone else. You notice a slip of paper pressed into a lamplighter's hand, a crude drawing of a top hat and a single mocking word, bet. The theory spreads like spilled ink. This entire disaster might be the result of a simple wager. Suddenly the anger in the crowd takes on a new edge, sharpened by the sense of having been made fools. The idea that all this ruin was for someone's amusement stings more than the loss of goods. You step aside to avoid a milkmaid weeping over her spilled pails, the white liquid seeping into the cracks between stones. The city's rhythm is broken. Even the pigeons seem confused, circling above the chaos. The sound of distant church bells does nothing to calm the nerves of those around you. The stakes are clear for many. This is about survival, not just pride. The working-class victims, those who brought goods, not just bought them, look around and realize compensation is a fantasy. A constable's whistle pierces the air, and for a moment the crowd freezes. You can see the fear and anger in every face. A silent agreement that justice is unlikely to arrive. The constable's boots splash through a puddle of spilled gin, and you catch the sharp scent as it mixes with the perfume and sweat. The chaos has its own momentum now. Even as the authorities try to restore order, the damage is done. You edge past a group of children who are stuffing their pockets with bruised oranges, their laughter oddly bright in the gloom. A horse rears, startled by the noise, and its hooves strike sparks from the cobblestones. The energy on Berners Street is electric, but not in a way that feels safe. You sense that any spark could set off another round of violence or panic. The city's usual boundaries have blurred, and trust is in short supply. Someone near you mutters that the real culprit is probably watching from a safe distance, amused by the spectacle. The idea sticks with you, a splinter under the skin. You wonder how many others are thinking the same thing, eyes scanning the windows above for a shadowy figure. The sense of being watched adds a layer of paranoia to the already volatile scene. The city feels smaller, more intimate, and more dangerous all at once. As you step into the gutter to avoid a barrel rolling your way, your boot lands on a sodden scrap of newspaper. The headline is smeared, but you can make out the words, "Unprecedented disorder on Berners Street." The press will have a field day, you realize, and reputations will be made or ruined by the morning. The public trust is as fragile as the glass now littering the pavement. For those caught up in the disaster, the consequences will linger long after the street is cleaned. You catch the eye of a young woman whose basket of violets has been trampled. Her face is set in a mask of anger and disbelief, and you sense she'll remember this day for years. The losses here are more than financial. They're personal. The city's memory is long, and stories like this become urban legends. You wonder how many will believe the truth, and how many will embellish it with each retelling. A sudden downpour begins, the rain hissing as it hits the hot stones. The crowd scatters, seeking shelter under awnings and in doorways. You feel the cold water soak through your coat, washing away some of the grime, but none of the tension. The rain blurs the outlines of people and buildings, turning the chaos into a watercolor of movement and sound. For a moment, it feels as if the city itself is trying to erase what happened. In the aftermath, you see merchants counting their losses, some shouting at constables, others slumped in silent despair. The reward for information is posted on a lamppost, but few stop to read it now. The promise of justice feels hollow, a gesture for the newspapers rather than the people who suffered. The sense of injustice lingers in the air, heavier than the rain. You realize that survival here means learning to live with unanswered questions. You duck into the shelter of a narrow alley, the sound of the city muffled by the rain and the close walls. The scent of wet stone and ink from a nearby print shop fills your lungs, grounding you in the present. You watch as a constable interviews a bystander, the conversation lost in the din. Even now, the story is being shaped, details added or forgotten with each retelling. The truth slips further out of reach. A rumor reaches your ear. Someone claims to have seen the hoaxer, a tall figure in a dark coat, vanishing into the fog. The image is almost too perfect, like something from a penny dreadful. You know how stories grow in the telling, each new detail more dramatic than the last. The city thrives on mystery, and this one will feed it for years. You sense that the real story is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. You pause at the corner, the rain easing into a fine mist. The crowd has thinned, but the sense of unease remains. You hear the distant clatter of a tram. the normal sounds of city life slowly returning. The world feels changed, as if the hoax has left a mark that will not easily fade. For those who lost everything, the memory will be sharp and bitter. As you step back into the street, you notice a gloved hand slip, a silver coin into a beggar's cup. The gesture is small, almost invisible amid the wreckage. It's a reminder that even in the midst of disaster, acts of kindness persist. The city is a living thing, wounded but resilient. You wonder what stories will grow from today's chaos. The stakes of this day are not just about money or pride. They are about trust, the fragile thread that holds a city together. When that thread snaps, everyone feels the loss, from the richest merchant to the poorest child. You realize that in a place like this, survival depends on more than luck. It depends on the stories people choose to believe. It is a damp November evening in London, 1810, and you are wedged into the oak-panelled back room of a tavern off Oxford Street, where the air is thick with pipe smoke and the tang of spilled gin. Through a gap in the velvet curtain, you catch the flicker of gaslight on a row of restless faces, labourers, clerks, and a few gentlemen in crumpled cravats. There's a sudden burst of laughter, sharp as the crack of billiard balls, and a whisper that rides the current of the room. Could anyone bring all of London to its knees with a single audacious prank? The challenge is thrown down like a gauntlet, and you feel the stakes settle over the crowd. Reputation, freedom, and the fragile trust of the city itself hang in the balance tonight. The name Samuel Beazley surfaces, drifting through the tavern like the scent of tobacco and intrigue. Beazley, an architect with a penchant for mischief, is said to be present, leaning against the bar, eyes glinting behind his spectacles, though no one can say for certain if he's the true mastermind or just another player in the shadows. You sense that the real architect of chaos is keeping to the periphery, letting others take the credit while he orchestrates the city's unraveling. The wager is simple: bring the city to a standstill and win the right to boast in every smoky parlour from Soho to Mayfair. What no one expects is just how spectacular the result will be. You step outside, and the cold air bites at your cheeks, carrying the distant clatter of horse-drawn carts and the muffled hum of a city on the cusp of confusion. It begins innocuously enough. A single delivery cart creaks up Berners Street, its driver glancing nervously at a slip of paper. The address is clear: 54 Berners Street, and the instructions are precise. The cart is piled high with furniture, a jumble of mahogany chairs and gilded mirrors, and the driver is convinced he's fulfilling a legitimate order. Within the hour, the street is transformed. More carts arrive, each laden with their own cargo: linens bundled in crisp white parcels, velvet jewelry boxes, and crates of delicate glassware that chime with every jolt of the cobblestones. By noon, the pavement is jammed with horses, porters, and a growing crowd of onlookers, their breath fogging in the chill. The city's rhythm stutters, then falters entirely. You hear the echo of footsteps as men in aprons and women in bonnets jostle for space, their voices rising above the din. The letters that summoned them were works of art, each one tailored with uncanny precision to its recipient. A jeweler receives a desperate plea for a wedding ring, while an upholsterer is promised a lucrative commission for a noble client. The language is formal, the handwriting elegant, and the pretexts just plausible enough to bypass suspicion. You marvel at the effort, dozens, perhaps hundreds, of invitations sent out in secret, each one a thread in a web that's now tightening around the city. The chaos escalates when a stream of medical men arrives, their black bags swinging and faces drawn with concern. Doctors, surgeons, and apothecaries are summoned to 54 Berners Street under the pretense of a grave illness, a lady in peril, a child at death's door. They push through the throng, only to find themselves shoulder to shoulder with chimney sweeps, pastry cooks, and a bewildered priest. The confusion is total. You catch the sharp medicinal tang of camphor and the faint scent of lavender water as the crowd swells. For the ordinary tradesmen and workers, the prank is no laughing matter. Deliveries are refused, tempers flare, and more than one cart driver finds himself out of pocket, his day's wages lost to a joke that spiraled far beyond its maker's intentions. The working-class victims, drawn in by the promise of honest work, will never see compensation. You feel the tension in the air, a mix of outrage, embarrassment, and the slow, simmering realization that someone has played the entire city for a fool. The stakes are suddenly personal. If you were a young apprentice or a struggling shopkeeper, this spectacle could mean the difference between rent paid and eviction looming. The city's trust in its own rhythm is shaken, and you sense in the anxious glances exchanged between strangers that public faith is a fragile thing. London's reputation as a city of order and industry is now a punchline in every tavern. You notice the police arrive, their uniforms crisp and their faces pinched with frustration. They attempt to restore order, but every new arrival brings fresh confusion. One constable is nearly trampled by a delivery of 12 grand pianos, while another is caught in a hailstorm of hat boxes. The authorities are powerless against the momentum of the hoax. You hear the sharp whistle of a bobby cutting through the din, but it's swallowed up by the chorus of complaints and laughter. Even as the sun sets and the last of the carts retreat, the mystery lingers. Who masterminded the letters? Was Samuel Beasley truly the architect, or just a convenient scapegoat? The true perpetrator is nowhere to be found, and the city is left to pick through the debris of its own gullibility. You taste the bitterness of defeat in the air, mingled with the sweet, lingering scent of mischief. In the aftermath, the story spreads like wildfire. Every newspaper in London carries a different version of events, each more outrageous than the last. Some blame rival merchants, others whisper of political motives, but no one can provide a definitive answer. The legend of 54 Berners Street grows with every retelling, its details shifting and multiplying like shadows at dusk. The next morning, you walk past the infamous address, boots crunching on the frost. The house stands silent, its windows shuttered against the world. There is no sign of the chaos that engulfed it just hours before. Only the faintest trace of sawdust and spilled ink remains. A ghostly reminder of the day London's order was turned inside out. You pause, listening to the city as it resumes its steady pulse. The echo of laughter from the tavern still rings in your ears, and you can almost hear the scratch of a pen as another letter is written in secret. The hoax has become an urban legend, a cautionary tale whispered in alleyways and drawing rooms alike. What makes this mystery endure is not just its scale, but its audacity. To bring an entire city to a halt, with nothing more than ink, wit, and the willingness to exploit trust, this is a feat that defies easy explanation. You realize that the real story happened out of sight, in the margins where reputations are made and lost on dares. For the victims, the consequences are lasting. Some lose a day's wages, others their dignity, and a few their faith in the fairness of the city. You sense that the memory of the hoax lingers longest among those who can least afford to laugh. The lesson is as sharp as the morning air. In a city built on trust, a single lie can topple the whole edifice. The legend of 54 Berners Street is retold at every opportunity, each version more elaborate than the last. Children dare each other to deliver mysterious notes, and adults swap theories over pints of bitter. The true mastermind remains a phantom, slipping through the cracks of history. The city, bruised but unbowed, learns to guard its secrets a little more closely. You find yourself drawn back to the tavern, where the laughter has faded, but the memory lingers. The air is thick with stories, some true, most invented, all colored by the thrill of the unknown. You realize that, in a city like London, mystery is as much a part of the landscape as the fog and the bells. The stakes, once distant, now feel immediate. You understand that public trust is a fragile currency, easily spent and hard to reclaim. The hoax at 54 Berners Street is a reminder that even the most orderly city can be undone by a single, well-placed dare. The lesson is not lost on you as you slip back into the night. As you walk, the sound of your footsteps echoes in the empty corridor of a side street. The city, for all its noise and bustle, holds its breath in the wake of the prank. You catch the faint aroma of smoke and perfume drifting through the air, a sensory thread that ties you to the events of the previous day. The mystery remains unsolved, its architect hidden in plain sight. The consequences ripple outward, touching lives in ways both obvious and invisible. You know that somewhere, perhaps in another tavern or another city, someone is already dreaming up the next great hoax. The story is far from over, and you are already caught in its web. It's a cold morning in London, 1810, and you're standing elbow to elbow with a sea of strangers outside 54 Berners Street. The fog hangs thick over the city, muffling the clatter of horse hooves and the shouts of delivery boys. You smell coal smoke and baking bread, but there's something else, an electric charge in the air, as if the whole city has paused to see what will happen next. The newspapers have already declared this the most confounding spectacle in recent memory, but no one knows who orchestrated it. You scan the headlines the next day, no culprit named. The authorities offer a reward, the press demands justice, and yet the city's cleverest prankster melts into anonymity. The real culprit is widely suspected, but no proof surfaces. The one responsible vanishes into the very crowd they created, leaving only rumors and reward posters behind. The name that echoes through every pub and parlor is Theodore Hook, a sharp-tongued satirist with a taste for chaos. You hear his name whispered by merchants who lost a day's trade and by constables who spent hours untangling the mess. Hook is everywhere and nowhere, always a step ahead of suspicion. Yet, when pressed, even the most confident gossips admit they have no evidence to offer the police. Samuel Beasley, an architect known for both his wit and his wages, swears he saw Hook accept a bet at a smoky dinner party. You can almost picture the scene: a crowded room, laughter swirling with the scent of cigars, and Hook's sly grin as he boasts of making any address the talk of the town. Beasley's claim becomes another thread in the city's tapestry of rumor, impossible to verify, but too delicious to ignore. By noon, the chaos at Berners Street has drawn a second wave. Opportunists who see profit in confusion. Pickpockets slip through the throng, their fingers light as feathers, while thieves use the distraction to snatch purses and watches. You feel a hand brush your coat pocket, and for a moment you're part of the story, not just a witness. The city's underbelly thrives on moments like this, when order gives way to spectacle. The authorities, desperate to restore calm, post a reward for any information leading to the culprit's arrest. You see the posters plastered on lampposts and hear the reward discussed in every coffeehouse. The sum is substantial, enough to tempt even the most loyal friend to betray a secret. Yet no one steps forward. The silence is as telling as any confession. The press, never one to let facts stand in the way of a good story, spins the Berners Street affair into legend overnight. Some papers claim the crowd reached 2,000, others say 5. The number of deliveries grows with every retelling. Coaches, physicians, chimney sweeps, and even a bishop, all summoned to the same doorstep. You notice the details shifting, the truth blurring at the edges. For days, Londoners debate whether the prank was as grand as reported or simply a clever exaggeration. You overhear arguments in the market, at the theatre, even in line at the bakery. Some insist they saw it all with their own eyes, while others scoff at the idea that one man could orchestrate such chaos. The city becomes a stage, and every citizen an actor in the unfolding drama. In the aftermath, you sense a deeper anxiety beneath the laughter. If one person can disrupt the city so completely, what does that say about the fragile order of daily life? The prank is more than a joke. It's a challenge to the authorities, a test of how quickly trust can unravel. The stakes are no longer just embarrassment or lost wages. Reputation, freedom, and public trust hang in the balance. You hear echoes of the hoax in the city's nervous jokes and wary glances. The Berners Street affair becomes shorthand for any unexplained commotion, a symbol of how quickly things can spiral out of control. The authorities tighten their grip, but you sense that the lesson will not be easily forgotten. Years later, historians still argue over the scale of the event. Some claim the story grew with each retelling, fueled by the press's appetite for sensation. Others insist that every detail, every delivery, every angry tradesman was real. The truth lies somewhere in the fog, just out of reach. You find yourself drawn to the quiet aftermath, when the crowds disperse and the city resumes its steady hum. The posters fade, the headlines shift, but the memory lingers. You wonder if Hook, wherever he is, feels a flicker of pride or regret. The city, for all its noise, offers no answer. In modern times, the Berners Street hoax is often compared to swatting, the practice of making a false emergency call to send police to an unsuspecting victim's home. You hear the same blend of thrill and fear in both stories, the same sense that a single lie can set the world spinning. The tools may change, but the impulse remains. This comparison reminds you that history repeats itself in unexpected ways. The line between prank and crime blurs, and the consequences ripple far beyond the original moment. In the early 20th century, as cities grow larger and more connected, the potential for chaos only increases. The Berners Street hoax leaves a mark on London's collective memory, a reminder that order is always more fragile than it seems. You can still hear the echo of footsteps in empty corridors, the hum of distant radios, and the faint scent of smoke drifting through the streets. The city never fully relaxes. Every so often, someone mentions the hoax in passing, a warning, a joke, or a challenge. You feel the tension in the air, as if the city is waiting for the next clever mind to test its limits. The lesson is clear. Mystery is not just a puzzle to be solved, but a force that shapes the world. As you leave Berners Street behind, you notice a merchant tallying his losses, his face tight with frustration. Crushed goods, ruined produce, wages lost to a day of bedlam, these are the real costs, hidden beneath the laughter. The city pays a price for every secret it keeps. You realize that the true legacy of the hoax is not the spectacle, but the lingering uncertainty. The culprit may have vanished, but the questions remain, woven into the city's fabric. Every rumor, every whispered suspicion keeps the mystery alive. The stakes are refreshed each time a new rumor surfaces, each time someone claims to know the truth. For you, the story is a reminder that trust is hard-won and easily lost. In a city where anyone might be the culprit, everyone becomes a suspect. You walk away with the scent of ink and perfume still hanging in the air, the sound of distant laughter fading behind you. The city settles, but the tension never fully disappears. The next time you pass a crowd gathered for some unexplained spectacle, you'll remember Berners Street and wonder who really stands at the center. You watch as merchants and laborers tally their losses, crushed goods, ruined produce, wages lost to a day of bedlam. London, November 1810. You stand shoulder to shoulder with merchants, porters, and flower girls on Berners Street, the air thick with the scent of coal smoke and bruised fruit. The morning's promise has curdled into chaos. Everywhere you look, crates are smashed open, apples rolling into gutters, and men in aprons argue with uniformed constables who can barely hear themselves over the din. The city's pulse is a frantic drumbeat, echoing off brick and glass. You feel the ground vibrate beneath your boots as another delivery cart lurches to a halt, its driver shouting for space that does not exist. By midday, the street is gridlocked, a tangle of horses, wagons, and frustrated Londoners stretching as far as you can see. Tempers flare. A surgeon in a frock coat wipes his brow, glaring at a baker whose flour sacks have split across the cobbles. The stench of spoiled fish mingles with the sharper tang of ink from a toppled printer's cart. You hear the distant clatter of a carriage, unable to pass the throng. This is what a city looks like when order collapses under the weight of a joke. You watch as merchants and laborers tally their losses, crushed goods, ruined produce, wages lost to a day of bedlam. The city's elite move on, but the working class is left with only frustration and unpaid bills. Rumors spread of compensation, but nothing comes. In short, The joke lands hardest on those with the least power, their struggles buried beneath the city's laughter. The echo of their complaints fades into the background noise of London life. At 54 Berners Street, the supposed epicenter of the madness, you spot a cluster of medical men, doctors, surgeons, and apothecaries, each clutching black bags and frowning at the locked door. They were summoned under the pretense of a grave illness, their urgency transformed into irritation as the truth dawns. One mutters about missed appointments, another curses the prankster behind this farce. The crowd jeers as they retreat, their reputations dented by the spectacle. You catch the scent of cheap perfume as a maid slips away, eager to avoid blame. Inside the nearby shops, the atmosphere is no less tense. A grocer sweeps up broken jars, muttering about lost earnings. You overhear a heated exchange between a delivery boy and his supervisor, the boy's voice cracking with worry over his docked pay. The city's working class, already teetering on the edge, now faces another invisible blow. For them, this is not a story to laugh about over supper. It's a day's survival stolen by a stranger's whim. News of the hoax spreads quickly, carried by word of mouth and the relentless churn of the press. By late afternoon, rumors swirl that the authorities will compensate the victims. You hear whispers in the alleyways, someone must pay for this. Yet by sunset, no restitution arrives. The only coins that change hands are those lost to spoiled goods and wasted labor. You feel the weight of injustice settle over the street like soot. The stakes are clear, even if no one says it aloud. In a city where reputation is currency, a single day's chaos can ruin a man's prospects for years. Freedom, too, hangs in the balance. A shopkeeper who cannot pay his rent risks debtor's prison. Public trust, once broken, is slow to return. You see it in the wary glances exchanged between neighbors, the way business slows in the aftermath. For some, survival itself is now a question of luck. As twilight falls, you hear a new rumor. There are calls for the perpetrator to make financial restitution. A reward is offered for information about the hoax. The promise of justice hangs in the air, as tantalizing as the scent of roasting chestnuts from a nearby vendor. Yet the crowd's mood is skeptical. You sense that the city's faith in fairness is wearing thin. You linger near the corner, watching as the last of the carts are pushed away and the street slowly empties. The hum of voices from upper windows blends with the distant clang of church bells. Somewhere, a child laughs, oblivious to the day's ruin. The city's heartbeat slows, but the anger beneath the surface does not fade. You can almost taste the bitterness in the cold night air. The next morning, the newspapers are ablaze with speculation. Some blame rival merchants, others point fingers at political agitators. But one name rises above the rest: Theodore Hook. You hear it whispered in coffee houses and shouted in markets. Hook is widely suspected, but no proof is found at the time. His laughter lingers in the city's memory, a ghostly echo that refuses to fade. A constable posts a notice at the corner of Berners Street, offering a reward for any information that leads to the culprit's capture. The paper flutters in the wind, its promise of justice as fragile as its thin, ink-stained surface. You watch a group of boys reading it aloud, their voices tinged with disbelief. The city's appetite for scandal is matched only by its skepticism. For days, the neighborhood buzzes with theories. Some claim to have seen a shadowy figure lurking near the scene. Others swear they received mysterious letters in the days before the hoax. The scent of conspiracy hangs over the cobblestones, as thick as the morning fog. You catch snippets of conversation, half-truths, wild guesses, and the occasional outburst of laughter. The line between fact and fiction blurs, leaving you adrift in a sea of rumor. The authorities, desperate to restore order, increase patrols in the area. You notice more constables than usual, their boots echoing in the empty corridors of side streets. Still, no one comes forward with real evidence. The city's memory is long, but its patience is short. Each day that passes without an answer deepens the wound. Compensation, it turns out, is a mirage. The working-class victims never receive a penny for their troubles. You hear a shopkeeper joke bitterly that the only thing he's gained is a story to tell his grandchildren. The laughter is hollow, edged with resentment. You feel the injustice settle into the bones of the street, a silent ledger of unpaid debts. Weeks later, the story has already begun to twist. Some say the hoax was a political statement. Others insist it was nothing more than a rich man's prank. The truth, slippery as an eel, refuses to be pinned down. You find yourself replaying the day's events, searching for clues in the chaos. The city, for all its noise, keeps its secrets well. One afternoon, you overhear a heated debate outside a pub. A man in a battered hat claims he saw Hook himself near Berners Street that morning, laughing with a friend. Another scoffs, insisting it was all a coincidence. The argument grows louder, drawing a small crowd. The city's appetite for gossip is insatiable, each new rumor feeding the fire. In the shadow of the great city, the stakes remain painfully real. For every merchant who lost his wares, for every laborer docked a day's pay, the cost of the hoax is measured in more than coins. Reputation, freedom, and trust. These are the true casualties. You see it in the wary way shopkeepers eye strangers, in the nervous laughter that follows any mention of Berners Street. As winter deepens, the story shows no sign of fading. The legend grows, sprouting new details with each retelling. Some say the city will never be the same. You walk the street one last time, boots crunching on frost, and feel the weight of history pressing in from all sides. The echoes of that day linger, woven into the very fabric of London life. London, 1810. And you are standing in the thick of Berners Street, boots slick with yesterday's rain, as a crowd surges and swells like a living tide. The air vibrates with the shout of costermongers, the sharp scent of coal smoke, and the faint trace of perfume from a passing lady's handkerchief. You hear the echo of footsteps, hundreds bouncing off brick and window glass, while a distant bell clangs in the fog. In the center of this chaos, a single address, 54 Berners Street, has become the unlikely stage for a spectacle that no one can quite explain. You push through the mob, coat collar up, as a horse-drawn cab nearly clips your heel. The driver curses, but you barely register it. Your attention fixed on the endless parade of characters converging at the same doorstep. A delivery man with a crate of oysters shouts for space, elbowing past a pair of footmen bearing a gilded mirror. The noise is relentless, the confusion absolute. Some parlor music drifts from a window, its melody barely cutting through the din. The newspapers have had a field day, and you can't help but notice the headlines, each more dramatic than the last. One broadsheet claims the entire affair was a masterstroke of social satire, while another insists it was nothing more than a childish prank, blown out of proportion by the press. The truth, as you sense from the nervous laughter around you, is as slippery as the London fog itself. No one agrees on the details, but everyone agrees on one thing. This is the most excitement the West End has seen all year. The name of the perpetrator is whispered in corners, never spoken aloud. You catch fragments. Hook, someone mutters, eyes darting, before the speaker vanishes into the crowd. Officially, the papers print nothing. The authorities are tight-lipped, and the real architect of the chaos remains a ghost, at least for now. The mystery only deepens as the hours drag on. You find yourself pressed up against a wrought iron fence, the cold biting through your gloves. A man beside you, Samuel Beasley, by his own cheerful introduction, claims to have been present for the original bet that started it all. He grins, eyes bright with mischief, and tells you this is the sort of thing London thrives on. You wonder if he's telling the truth or just angling for a story in tomorrow's paper. Either way, his presence adds another layer to the legend. Suddenly, a ripple moves through the crowd as a black carriage pulls up, gleaming in the weak afternoon light. Word spreads. The governor of the Bank of England himself has arrived, summoned by a letter warning of a massive fraud at this very address. You watch as he steps out, flanked by stern-faced constables, his expression unreadable. The stakes have just escalated. Reputation, trust, and perhaps even freedom now hang in the balance. The tension is palpable. You hear the hiss of gas lamps being lit as dusk settles in, casting long shadows across the street. In the confusion, pickpockets and thieves begin to work the edges of the crowd, hands quick and silent as they slip through pockets and purses. For some, this is an opportunity not to be missed. For others, it's a reminder that chaos breeds danger as often as it does laughter. A woman in a feathered hat clutches her handbag tighter, eyes darting from face to face. You catch the scent of tobacco and cheap gin as a group of boys weave through the throng, snatching what they can. The city's underbelly has come to the surface, drawn by the promise of easy pickings. In the midst of the commotion, a constable pins a notice to a lamppost. A reward is being offered for information about the hoax. This is the moment when rumor becomes legend. You feel it in the way people lean in to share half-heard secrets, their voices dropping to conspiratorial whispers. Every new arrival adds fuel to the fire. A bishop in full regalia, a pair of opera singers, even a troupe of acrobats who arrive for a performance that was never scheduled. The spectacle grows by the minute, and so does the confusion. As night falls, the street takes on a carnival air. Vendors hawk roasted chestnuts to shivering onlookers, and the flicker of lanterns paints shifting patterns on the cobblestones. Somewhere, a child begins to cry, lost in the press of bodies. You feel the stakes shift again. What began as a prank now teeters on the edge of disaster. The authorities can barely contain the crowd, and the threat of violence hangs in the air. You step back, heart pounding, as a scuffle breaks out near the carriage. The governor is hustled away by his guards, his dignity in tatters. For a brief moment, you glimpse the face of Samuel Beasley, his smile now tinged with worry. The mood has changed, and everyone can sense it. This is no longer just a joke. In the aftermath, the newspapers will spin wild new versions of the story. Some will claim the entire city was in on the joke. Others will insist it was the work of a single, brilliant mind. The legend of Berners Street only grows with each retelling. You realize that the truth may never be known. Not fully, and not by anyone standing here tonight. Smoke drifts through the air, curling around the lamplight. The crowd begins to thin as the hour grows late, boots scraping on wet stone. A few stragglers linger, hoping for one last glimpse of the mysterious perpetrator. You watch as the constables sweep the street, their faces set and grim. In the days that follow, rumors will spread like wildfire. The reward notice draws out every would-be informant in the city, each with a story more outrageous than the last. Some claim to have seen Hook himself, slipping away into the shadows. Others insist the real culprit is someone nobody suspects. The legend mutates with every telling. You find yourself replaying the day's events, searching for a thread of truth amid the confusion. The echo of footsteps in empty corridors, the scent of ink on freshly printed newsprint, the distant clatter of city life, all of it lingers in your mind. The stakes remain: public trust, personal reputation, and the thin line between order and chaos. The Berners Street hoax becomes a touchstone for every future prank, every unexplained event in London. People cite it in pubs and parlours, their voices hushed and reverent. The name Hook carries a weight that no one can quite define, a symbol of both genius and folly. You sense that the city itself has changed, if only a little. As you walk away from Berners Street, the fog thickens, muffling the sounds behind you. The legend will outlast the memory of any single day. Somewhere, a clock ticks in a quiet room, its steady beat a reminder that not every mystery can or should be solved. The air tastes of smoke and secrets. Years will pass, and the story will only grow taller. Children will dare each other to visit 54 Berners Street on a moonless night. The city will change, but the legend will remain, a shadow in the fog. You realize you have become part of the story yourself, whether you meant to or not. The stakes, you see, are never just about the prank. They are about trust, reputation, and the uneasy feeling that something in the world refuses to be explained away. Even now, as you step out of the lamplight, you feel the weight of unsolved history pressing in. The city exhales, and you walk on, carrying the secret with you. Now, you find yourself in a quiet town in America, decades later, where the echoes of Berners Street still linger in the most unexpected corners. It's September 1944, and you're standing at the edge of a front porch in Mattoon, Illinois, as the sun slips behind rows of tidy houses, and the air smells faintly of sweet corn and gasoline. The evening is quiet, broken only by the distant hum of a radio, and the low chatter of neighbors swapping rumors over hedges. You can almost taste the tension. Something odd is happening here, and the whole town knows it. A sharp breeze carries the scent of smoke from a backyard fire. But there's something else, too, something chemical and sour. The calm of small-town America has been punctured, and you can feel it in your chest. You hear footsteps echo along the cracked sidewalk, Then a door slams shut 2 houses down. Someone's daughter claims she saw a shadowy figure moving near the alley, but her father just shakes his head and mutters about nerves. Still, you notice how he double-checks the lock before drawing the curtain. The night air is thick with the possibility of danger, and every sound seems amplified. It's as if the very streets are holding their breath, waiting for the next incident. Word spreads quickly in Mattoon. There's a phantom at large, an attacker who leaves his victims dizzy and gasping, their rooms filled with a sickly sweet vapor. The papers call him the Mad Gasser, and the name alone is enough to keep you glancing over your shoulder. Housewives whisper about ruined groceries and spoiled milk, convinced that the air itself has turned treacherous. Some claim their lips went numb, others that their legs gave out as they tried to flee. The stories pile up, each more sensational than the last, and you can't help but wonder what's really lurking in the darkness. You step off the porch and walk toward the heart of town, where the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Every so often, a police cruiser glides by, windows rolled down, officers peering into alleyways with uneasy eyes. The authorities have cordoned off certain blocks, hoping to catch the culprit in the act. But the gasser remains elusive. You catch a whiff of perfume as a woman hurries past, clutching her child's hand, her face tight with worry. The air is charged with suspicion, and trust is in short supply. At the corner, you overhear a heated argument between 2 men. One blames the government for secret experiments, the other swears it's a neighborhood prank gone too far. Both seem convinced that someone, somewhere, knows the truth. The local paper fans the flames with headlines that grow bolder by the day, promising answers that never quite materialize. You can't escape the feeling that the town itself is unraveling, one rumor at a time. Inside a modest bungalow, you find Mrs. Harper sitting rigidly at her kitchen table, a damp cloth pressed to her mouth. She insists she saw a figure in the yard, dressed in dark clothes and moving with uncanny speed. Her husband checks the window, his knuckles white against the sill. The room smells of strong coffee and fear, and you sense that sleep will not come easily tonight. Outside, a dog barks, then falls silent. The next morning, Mattoon wakes to shattered nerves and more sensational headlines. The police chief has ordered new patrols, and a group of volunteers, armed with flashlights and baseball bats, marches down Main Street in a show of resolve. Some residents blame the local chemical plant, convinced that a leak has poisoned the air. Others believe the gasser is a figment, conjured by wartime anxiety and too many sleepless nights. You watch as neighbors eye each other warily, every friendship now tinged with doubt. The Mad Gasser's legend grows with each retelling, and you notice a pattern. The attacks never leave physical evidence, only frightened witnesses and a lingering sense of violation. No footprints in the garden, no fingerprints on the window, just the memory of a strange smell and the echo of footsteps fading into the night. The police block off entire streets, hoping to trap the phantom, but he slips away every time. As you pass the old hardware store, you spot a crowd gathered around a bulletin board, plastered with warnings and hand-drawn sketches of the suspect. None of the drawings match, but each is more menacing than the last. The town's collective imagination is working overtime, and you can feel the tension mounting. Someone mutters about calling in the FBI, but most just want their lives back. The consequence is plain. Mattoon's sense of safety is gone. You walk past a row of shuttered shops, their windows fogged with condensation. The scent of ink and newsprint drifts from the local press office, where reporters huddle over typewriters, searching for a new angle. One editor confides that the story has taken on a life of its own, and even he isn't sure what's real anymore. The line between fact and rumor is blurring, and you sense that the truth is slipping further away with each passing day. Then, a sudden reversal. A woman claims she recognized the gasser's face in the crowd at church, but her accusation fizzles when the man turns out to be a visiting salesman. The town erupts in nervous laughter, but the relief is short-lived. The fear returns the next night, as another family reports a strange vapor seeping through their window. It's as if the gasser is always one step ahead, vanishing just as you think you've caught up. You find yourself drawn to the edge of town, where the houses thin out and the fields stretch toward the horizon. The quiet here is different, deeper, almost oppressive. You pause, listening for the telltale sound of footsteps or the faint hiss of gas. Instead, you hear only the distant clatter of a train and the soft chirp of crickets. The world feels smaller, more vulnerable, and you realize that the real threat may be the fear itself. Back in the center of Mattoon, the police chief holds a press conference, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying exhaustion. He insists they're closing in on a suspect. But the details are vague, and the crowd grows restless. Some shout for answers, others demand action. The stakes are clear if the gasser isn't caught soon. The town's faith in its leaders and in each other may never recover. You slip into a smoky diner where the regulars debate the latest theories over chipped mugs of coffee. One man swears he saw a masked figure darting between cars, while another insists the whole thing is a case of mass hysteria. The waitress rolls her eyes, but you notice she keeps glancing at the door. The conversation turns to other unsolved mysteries. Strange lights over the cornfields, a rash of burglaries in neighboring towns. It seems everyone is searching for a pattern, a way to make sense of the chaos. A new rumor takes hold. Someone claims the gasser is using a homemade device, cobbled together from spare parts and stolen chemicals. The details are fuzzy, but the story spreads like wildfire. A local mechanic is questioned, then released, his reputation tarnished by suspicion. The townsfolk grow bolder, organizing night patrols and setting traps, but the phantom remains at large. The consequence is simple. Every failed lead makes the fear worse. You notice that the attacks always seem to happen near the same crossroads, a quiet intersection flanked by a bakery and an old boarding house. You linger there at dusk, watching as the last shopkeeper locks up and the streetlights flicker on. The air is thick with the scent of yeast and exhaust. For a moment, it feels like nothing will happen. But then a scream shatters the calm, and you're running toward the sound without thinking. It's the 1940s, and you're standing on a Mattoon sidewalk at dusk, the sky bruised purple above the neat rows of houses. The air holds the sweetness of cut grass, but there's something else, an acrid chemical tang that bites your nose. You hear the distant clatter of a passing train, radios buzzing in living rooms, and the low hum of worry in every whispered conversation. Neighbors cluster beneath porch lights, eyes darting toward the shadows, every footstep on the pavement echoing like a warning. You can almost taste the tension, thick and metallic, as another ambulance wails somewhere out of sight. Here's what you know: people are falling ill, and not from any ordinary bug. One woman reports a sudden numbness in her legs after smelling a strange gas through her window. Her husband returns home to find her collapsed on the sofa, the scent of perfume and something sharper lingering in the curtains. Word spreads like wildfire, faster than the police can keep up. Families double lock their doors. Children are kept inside, and the streets of this quiet Illinois town become the stage for a real-life whodunit. You're not just a bystander. You're right in the thick of it, heart pounding with every fresh report. The newspapers dub the unseen culprit the mad gasser of Mattoon. Each morning, headlines scream about new attacks, describing a shadowy figure seen slipping between hedges or vanishing into alleys. You catch a glimpse of a police cruiser rolling by, its spotlight sweeping across empty lawns, searching for any sign of movement. The officers wear expressions as tight as their uniforms, radios clipped to their belts, hissing static updates. In this town, everyone is suspect, and trust dissolves faster than the evening mist. There's an unspoken understanding that anyone could be next. The authorities set up patrols, but the mysterious fumes keep drifting in, always just ahead of any official response. A neighbor down the block claims she saw a tall man in dark clothes lurking near her back fence, but when police arrive, they find nothing but trampled grass and a lingering odor. The local hospital fills with patients describing dizziness, nausea, and a burning sensation in their throats. Doctors are baffled. Their tests reveal nothing conclusive, and the symptoms fade as quickly as they appear. You listen to the radio, the announcer's voice trembling as he relays the latest warning. Keep your windows shut tight after sundown. It's not just the threat of illness that unsettles you. The real fear is that the mad gasser seems to vanish at will, leaving behind only confusion and suspicion. Rumors swirl about a vengeful chemist, a disgruntled factory worker, or even a German spy, each theory more outlandish than the last. The police chief holds a press conference, promising swift action, but his words ring hollow against the mounting panic. You can feel the collective anxiety ratcheting higher with every unexplainable attack. In Mattoon, reputation and public trust are now on the line, and no one wants to be seen as the next victim or the next suspect. Then, as quickly as the attacks began, they taper off. The final incident is reported on a muggy September night, the details as hazy as the fumes themselves. Some say the mad gasser moved on. Others insist he never existed at all. The police quietly shelve the investigation, and the town tries to return to normal. But you know better. The memory lingers, as sharp and persistent as the scent that once haunted every room. The sense of vulnerability never quite fades, even as the headlines move on. You walk the streets in the weeks that follow, noticing the subtle changes. Doors stay locked a little longer. Neighbors eye each other with a trace of suspicion. The easy camaraderie of small-town life replaced by a wary caution. The hum of radios now carries a different note, one of relief, tinged with lingering doubt. The mad gasser has become an urban legend, whispered about at slumber parties and retold in nervous laughter. You realize that survival here isn't just about avoiding danger. It's about learning to live with uncertainty. But just as the fear begins to ebb, a twist arrives from across the Atlantic. News breaks of a spectacular hoax in London, where an entire street was brought to a standstill by a single prank. Berners Street, usually a sleepy row of townhouses, found itself gridlocked by police, fire brigades, and dozens of tradesmen, all summoned by anonymous letters claiming emergencies at every address. The chaos is so complete that even the Prince Regent hears about it, thanks to the perpetrator's high society connections. You hear the story on your neighbor's radio, the announcer struggling to hide his amusement. Suddenly, the Mattoon panic feels less like an isolated nightmare and more like part of a global pattern, a kind of psychological contagion that leaps from city to city. In London, the authorities demand restitution from the prankster, hoping to restore public order and save face. In Mattoon, no such culprit steps forward, and the town is left with nothing but questions. You sense the stakes shifting. It's not just about catching a criminal anymore, but about preserving the fragile fabric of trust that holds a community together. The scent of smoke and ink drifts through the streets as newspapers dissect the two cases side by side. Some commentators suggest that the mad gasser might have been inspired by stories from abroad, or that the panic itself was the real contagion. You can't help but notice the parallels. Ordinary people swept up in extraordinary events, their reputations and freedoms hanging in the balance. The idea that a single rumor or a well-placed hoax could paralyze an entire town is both thrilling and terrifying. You wonder if the truth will ever come out, or if the mystery will simply fade into folklore. Meanwhile, in the United States, the practice of swatting begins to surface. A new breed of hoax where false emergency calls send police racing to innocent victims' homes. The echoes of Mattoon are unmistakable. Fear, confusion, and the spectre of unseen threats. You see the pattern now, a thread connecting distant cities and decades, each episode leaving scars that never quite heal. The authorities scramble to adapt, but the rules of the game keep changing. Every time you hear a siren now, your mind flashes back to that summer. Windows rattling, radios blaring, the sickly sweet smell of gas lingering in your throat. The line between reality and rumor blurs, and you realize how easily panic can take root. The mad gasser may have vanished, but the legacy of fear remains, woven into the fabric of everyday life. You feel the weight of history pressing in, a reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. The consequence is plain. Even decades later, the events of Mattoon serve as a cautionary tale. Public trust is fragile, easily shattered by the unknown. As you walk beneath the streetlights, the echoes of those long-ago footsteps seem to follow you, a reminder that the line between safety and chaos is perilously thin. The scent of cut grass returns, mingling with the memory of something darker. You can't help but wonder what secrets still linger in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. You pause at the corner, listening to the distant hum of a radio drifting from an open window. The announcer's voice is calm now, but you remember when every broadcast felt like an alarm bell. The world has moved on, but the story of the mad gasser still flickers in the collective memory of Mattoon. You know that history's most baffling mysteries rarely end with a neat resolution. Instead, they leave behind a residue, a sense of unfinished business that keeps you looking over your shoulder. As you turn toward home, the city feels both familiar and strange. The streets are quiet, but the past lingers in every shadow, every echo of laughter or hurried step. You realize that the real mystery isn't just who or what haunted Mattoon, but why the story still matters. The stakes were never just about catching a culprit. They were about the survival of trust itself. You carry that lesson with you, a silent companion through the smoky dusk. You head inside, closing the door softly behind you. The air is cooler now, the scent of grass fading as night settles in. Somewhere, a radio crackles with static, and you imagine the world beyond Mattoon, other cities, other stories, other mysteries waiting to unfold. The echoes of unsolved history drift through your thoughts, as persistent and intangible as the mad gasser himself. You settle in, knowing that the next enigma is never far away. You're in post-war Tokyo, mid-century modernity, humming all around. Tokyo, 1948. You're standing on a rain-slick sidewalk, neon reflecting in puddles, the city's air thick with the scent of burnt matches and damp wool. Outside Taikoku Bank, a knot of people gathers beneath flickering signage, their breath curling in the cold. You catch the distant buzz of a radio from a nearby shop, news in clipped, urgent tones. The crowd's tension is almost physical, as if the city itself is holding its breath. Every eye is drawn to the bank's stone doors, waiting for something to break the uneasy calm. Inside, the marble floors echo with footsteps, yours among them. The bank clerk's fingers tremble as he counts bills, glancing at the clock above the teller window. The air hums with a faint chemical tang, ink and money, and the metallic whiff of fear. You are here to deposit your week's wages, but a stranger in a crisp uniform interrupts the routine. He claims to be a government health official, flashing a badge that glints under the fluorescent lights. The stranger's voice is steady, but his eyes dart from face to face. He instructs everyone to drink a liquid from a small bottle, warning of a deadly outbreak. The scent is sharp, almost medicinal, and you hesitate. Some obey, swallowing the bitter draught with a shudder. Moments later, bodies crumple to the floor. The room fills with panicked shouts and the frantic clatter of coins. In the chaos, the uniformed man sweeps cash into a satchel, moving with practiced precision. You feel your heart hammering, the edge of panic scraping at your nerves. The city's outside noises, trams, rain, the drone of distant sirens, fade to a muffled roar. When you finally stagger to your feet, the thief has vanished, leaving only the acrid scent of the potion and the dull thud of loss. The Taikoku bank heist has just become the talk of post-war Tokyo. The police arrive, their boots splashing through alley puddles, barking orders as they cordon off the bank. You overhear whispers. Some say the thief was a doctor. Others insist he was a soldier. The only certainty is the pile of unconscious victims and the missing fortune. The city's trust in authority is shaken, and you feel it in your bones. This isn't just a robbery. It's an assault on the fragile order of a battered city. Days pass, and the story mutates. You hear it retold in noodle shops, on crowded trams, even in the bathhouse steam. Each version adds a new detail, a shadowy accomplice, a coded message, a secret escape route through the sewers. The official investigation stalls, files quietly disappear, and rumors begin to outpace fact. You sense the city's suspicion growing, a subtle current that tugs at every conversation. Then, just as the buzz begins to fade, another shock ripples through Tokyo. You're at home, radio humming beside you, when the radio bulletin crackles to life. Static fills the speaker. Then a voice, unfamiliar, measured, almost hypnotic, cuts through the noise. The message is brief, but its effect is electric. Across the city, people freeze mid-sentence, straining to catch every word. Officials scramble, their faces pale in the blue glow of the studio. You picture them rifling through drawers, searching for a script or a protocol that fits this moment. The broadcast ends as suddenly as it began, leaving a residue of dread in the air. That night, you sleep fitfully, the city's pulse thumping through your window. You know something has shifted, though you cannot name it yet. By morning, the story is everywhere. Neighbors huddle in doorways, trading theories about secret societies and coded threats. You overhear a woman insist the voice belonged to a disgraced scientist. A man swears it was a warning from a rival power. The city's rumor mill churns faster than ever. You sense that public trust, already brittle, is now close to shattering. In the weeks that follow, you notice subtle changes. Police patrols double, but their eyes seem wary, almost haunted. Bank tellers now eye every customer with suspicion, fingers hovering near silent alarms. You see posters urging vigilance, their slogans sharp as knives. The city's surface order remains, but beneath it, paranoia simmers. You remember how, just a few years earlier, similar uncertainty haunted London's streets. There, a different sort of hoax played out, one that drew crowds, chaos, and a flood of opportunists. The air on Berners Street was thick with laughter and disbelief, as pranksters orchestrated a spectacle that spiraled out of control. Pickpockets and thieves moved through the throng, their hands quick and practiced, taking advantage of the confusion. In that English fog, the mastermind, Hook, stood apart. He was known for improvising witty, satirical songs on the spot, turning every mishap into a punchline. His connections reached high, right up to the Prince Regent himself, a fact whispered behind gloved hands at fashionable parties. The city's elite found it all amusing, but for the working-class victims, there was no compensation, only the bitter aftertaste of humiliation. Back in Tokyo, the echoes of those old games feel uncomfortably close. You realize that the boundary between prank and crime, between spectacle and real harm, is often paper-thin. The city's sense of order, its reputation, its freedom, even its survival, now hangs on the edge of a knife. You feel this tension every time you pass the bank, every time a stranger's voice crackles through the air. You walk the city at dusk, the neon glow painting your shadow long across the pavement. The scent of grilled fish mingles with the faint aroma of smoke, and everywhere you sense watchful eyes. The city's rhythm is unchanged, but its mood is not. You realize the mystery has woven itself into the fabric of daily life. One evening, You find yourself in a narrow alley behind the bank, footsteps echoing off the damp bricks. You spot a scrap of paper wedged in a drain, just a fragment, but scrawled with a symbol you recognize from the news. It's nothing you can decipher, but you tuck it into your pocket anyway. You feel the weight of a secret pressing against your thigh. Later, at a smoky bar, you overhear two men arguing about the heist. One claims the thief was never caught because he had help from inside the bank. The other insists it was all a cover for something bigger, a political message perhaps, or a warning to those in power. Their voices rise, then fade into the background hum. You finish your drink, the taste sharp and bracing. The weeks blur together, each day bringing a new rumor. You hear talk of a hidden vault, a coded ledger, a list of names that might unlock everything. The police announce fresh leads, but nothing sticks. The city's attention shifts, but the mystery remains, unresolved and quietly menacing. It's dusk in London, 1810, and you stand on Berners Street, boots slick with rainwater, watching the crowd gather outside number 54. The street is choked with horses, carriages, and a confusion of shouting men in top hats. You catch the scent of coal smoke and wet wool as a baker's boy dodges past, his tray of buns nearly upended by a jostling constable. The air bristles with expectation. Something extraordinary is about to unfold. You feel the pulse of the city's secrets at your fingertips, as if you could reach out and peel back the brickwork to glimpse what no one else can see. The Lord Mayor of London himself arrives, his carriage gleaming under the street lamps, gold chain swinging with every step as he surveys the chaos. At his side, a footman clutches a letter, unopened, bearing the seal of the city. The mayor's face is red and incredulous as he pushes through a line of fishmongers, their baskets abandoned in the gutter. You hear the low murmur of the crowd. Why would the city's most powerful man be summoned here, to a modest townhouse? The stakes are clear. Reputation, order, and the dignity of London itself are in play. Inside number 54, the housekeeper wrings her hands, overwhelmed by a tide of visitors, chimney sweeps, doctors, lawyers, pastry chefs, all claiming to be summoned by urgent letters. The hallway is thick with the smell of damp coats and the sharper tang of ink-stained paper. You watch as a surgeon, his bag gleaming, argues with the bewildered clergyman about who was called first. Each insists their letter came from a desperate soul inside. The confusion grows, and with every new arrival, the stakes rise for those trapped in this farce. Outside, the governor of the Bank of England steps down from his carriage, his shoes crunching on gravel. He clutches a letter describing a massive fraud, supposedly hatched within these very walls. The governor's eyes dart, suspicion flickering as he scans the faces in the crowd. You sense his pride is on the line. If he's been duped, the city's financial reputation could unravel. The chill in the air is nothing compared to the cold dread settling in his gut. You slip through the crowd, catching snatches of conversation, whispers of a mysterious mastermind behind this spectacle. Some claim it's a disgruntled servant. Others mutter about a foreign agent. The city's rumour mill grinds on, fueled by the scent of scandal and the promise of a great reveal. You feel the tension like static, every eye searching for a culprit. The press hounds circle, notebooks ready, eager to immortalize the farce in tomorrow's broadsheets. The Lord Mayor, now flanked by a cluster of bewildered officials, demands answers. His voice cuts through the din, sharp as broken glass. "Who is responsible for this outrage?" he bellows. But the only reply is a ripple of nervous laughter. The mayor's authority is on trial, and you sense that public trust is fraying. If the city's guardians can be fooled, who can you trust to keep the peace? As the night deepens, the chaos only escalates. A parade of tradesmen, tailors, shoemakers, even a coffin maker arrive, each with a letter in hand. The housekeeper's nerves are shredded, and the mayor's patience wears thin. You hear the distant clang of church bells, a reminder that order is slipping away. The city's sense of control, so carefully maintained, now teeters on the brink. Suddenly, a young constable stumbles upon a clue. He finds a stack of identical envelopes in a nearby alley, each addressed in the same looping script. The ink is fresh, the wax barely cooled. You lean in, heart thumping, as he calls over his superior. This is the first real evidence, proof that the entire affair was orchestrated by a single, unseen hand. The discovery spreads like wildfire. The crowd surges, desperate for a glimpse of the letters, their curiosity now tinged with fear. You hear the low hum of suspicion. If someone can engineer such a spectacle, what else might they be capable of? The city's sense of safety is shaken, and for a moment even the mayor looks uncertain. In the days that follow, the press seizes on the story, transforming a night of confusion into a legend. Some newspapers exaggerate the scale, claiming thousands of visitors and chaos that lasted for days. Others hint at a shadowy mastermind, never named, who orchestrated the hoax with surgical precision. The truth is obscured by rumor and hyperbole. But one fact remains: the identity of the perpetrator is never revealed during his lifetime. You walk the streets of your own city now, the echoes of Berners Street lingering in the rhythm of your steps. The past is never as distant as it seems. Its mysteries seep into the present, shaping the stories you tell and the trust you place in those who lead. The scent of smoke, ink, and the faint trace of perfume drift through the modern night, reminders that every city has its ghosts. The Berners Street hoax is more than a prank. It's a challenge to authority, a test of how easily the powerful can be made to dance. For you, it's a reminder that public trust is fragile, and that a single clever mind can upend the order of an entire city. The lesson lingers. Even the most secure institutions are vulnerable to the unpredictable. In the end, history's greatest mysteries are not just puzzles to be solved, but warnings written in invisible ink. You carry them with you every time you step into the city's shadows. You hear the distant clatter of a carriage, unable to pass the throng. Somewhere, a quiet conversation hums in a nearby room. 54 Berners Street.